Thank you for your suffering talk. Yeah. A long time ago, I was practicing with Zen Master Sung, and I guess I was in my 30s, and then there was this old lady, probably a lot younger than me. There was this old lady there who had terrible, terrible arthritis. And so it was very, very difficult for her to sit. And for those who don't have body problems, sitting in a chair is also difficult if you have body problems. Keeping still is what's really hard. Unless maybe you're lying in bed, maybe that's okay. But yeah, so she said to him, you know, my body hurts all the time. And he said, pain is just pain. That's what he said. So, pain is just pain. And maybe you do something about it, and maybe you can't do anything about it. But it doesn't have to capture your mind. That's very important. It doesn't have to capture your mind. And joy doesn't have to capture your mind. So a long time ago, when I was even younger than when I was sitting at retreat with Zen Master Sung, I was in college, and I was supposed to meet my boyfriend in New York City. I was just north of New York City at Sarah Lawrence College, and I was supposed to take the New Haven Railroad to Grand Central Station, and he was supposed to meet me there. But we'd read the train schedule wrong, and there was no train on a Saturday at that time. And this was before cell phones. And, you know, if you lived in a dormitory, you had like one phone on each hallway. And then you'd have to call the front desk, and then they'd have to call the phone, and then you'd have to hope someone picked up. And of course, my boyfriend had already run to meet me and gone down to meet me. And so I managed to reach his roommate. And I said, you know, you know, the train doesn't exist. I feel so terrible. You know, Leslie's down there trying to find me, and I'm over here and I can't get there. And Leslie's roommate said, don't worry, the sky is blue. So that's attachment to joy, you know. That didn't help me, you know. So yeah, so grief is different actually from suffering. Grief can be suffering, but grief is also, like you said, grief means you really love this person. And it's your processing of this love. And yeah, so grief is quite something, and then you absorb it, and you absorb it, and you absorb it, and you absorb it. And then you begin to change because of that. And yeah, but don't let anything, no mental state, control you to the point where you can't see what's actually in front of you. That's very important. So, yes.
So, what you're saying, like, you know, suffering and pain and grief, it is, but don't let it capture our mind.
Yeah.
And so,
which is really hard. So I should say, for people online who can't hear that clearly, what Jennifer was saying was suffering and pain and injury. And I was saying, don't let that capture your mind.
So, and I think to a lot of us here, it's like, okay, I mean, it's easier said than done, of course.
It's easier said than done,
but
yes.
Conceptually, it's like, okay, but how do we help someone else? Because we can't tell somebody who's suffering. It's like, well, you know, Kyle, don't let it capture your mind.
Right.
Yeah.
So your question is, how do you help someone else? Well, it depends on the situation, doesn't it? Yeah. Everything does. Sometimes you can give someone a hug, and just that realization that someone cares for them helps them. And sometimes you can take someone out for a beer, if you drink beer. That might help them. It really depends completely on the situation and your capabilities and their receptiveness. And the mistake we make is we want to relieve them of it. We want to make it go away. And that's a big mistake, because you can't make someone else's suffering, you can't make someone else's happiness go away. Well, you can make someone else's happiness go away, you just punch them in the face, it'll go away. But yeah, so the thing is to just be with someone in whatever way, and just be there for them. I mean, it's really easy to say, it's really hard to do, because we have our ideas of what we want for this person. And you have to just put those ideas aside. And they have to put, we all have our ideas for ourselves, we have to put those aside. So this morning, I was part of the online Sangha, finished this 90-day Kyolche online intensive retreat. And to do this, what you do is you make a pledge of extra practice that you're going to do. And some people pledge extra bows, and some people pledge extra chanting. And I'm very happy to say that 3 members of Kansas Sangha, Kansas Zen Center, were a part of this. And one of the things that many people said was, well, I made this pledge, but then this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, So just to be completely open in our own lives, about our own lives and about the lives of people around us. It's very important. Don't hold anything. Okay? So thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes.
I think a couple times over various talks, I've heard people bring up the concept of karma.
You want to know about karma?
Yeah, and in relation to practice.
Karma.
So I've heard different things, and I know there's more of a slang version of it that's widely used in Western culture that is not.
So you want to know karma, relation of karma to practice, and is this different from the slang version of karma? Yes. Okay. So karma actually has several meanings, not just slang versus classical. In classical, it has several meanings, and one of them is cause and effect. And then another meaning is sort of the personal karma, the result of your personal actions. So those are kind of separate. So I remember as a kid, I used to read, I just adored Karl Barks's Uncle Scrooge comics and Donald Duck. And so you had Donald, and Donald Duck, he was always blowing it. Nothing ever turned out right for him. And then you had, who was it? Was it Gander Goose, the guy, everything lucky happened for him. I mean, he'd walk down the street and he'd see a $20 bill, and which back then was a lot of money. And Donald would walk down the street and he'd fall into a hole. That was sort of their karma, right? And then you had Scrooge with his money karma, holding onto his money. Don't be like Scrooge, people. Yeah, so I have to put in a plug. We're having a fundraising campaign. Don't be like Scrooge. But yeah, so this notion of individual karma. And, we talk about that a lot in Buddhism. It's sort of the carrot at the end of the stick. Change your karma, be happier, like that. But that kind of karma, we just make that up. This continual storyline where Donald is always falling into holes, and Gladstone Gander was the inventor. Whatever his name was always running into $20 bills. That's just a story we make up. But then there's this more profound notion of karma, which is cause and effect. And this is not personal. This is not about your karma and my karma. I have such good karma, you have such bad, it's not like that. This is cause and effect are not personal, which is why you have these really disgusting characters who have a lot of wealth and power. It's not that, in this life they will necessarily run into some kind of consequence that takes away their money or takes away their power, sometimes, but not always. And, you know, you have these people who are kind and wise and wonderful, and they're stuck in crappy jobs, and they're in terrible debt, and they have bad health and no health insurance. And that's not because they've done something wrong in their life. So this karma is impersonal, and it means every action that you make has a consequence, not necessarily one in your life, but some consequence. So this becomes a very big responsibility in our lives. It's like the butterfly effect, you know? Butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil and you get a tornado in Kansas, that kind of thing. So this karma is very, very important. And to pay attention, to realize that what we do is not just redounding on us, but it's also affecting everyone around us. And, you know, you don't hold it so this you go around, oh my God, I don't dare do anything. Because even by going, I don't dare do anything, you're doing something, right? It's just keep your mind open, keep your, you know, realize that we all are interconnecting. That's a nicer way to put it. We're all interconnecting, we're all affecting everything else, and everything is affecting us. And so this notion of cause and effect is very important. And I have time for a very wonderful koan, which is Bajang's fox, which many people here are familiar with. So Bajang, 7th or 8th century, China, 8th century. And he was a very, very great and important Zen master. He's the one who said a day without work is a day without eating, and made the monks, instead of begging, that they had to actually work the fields and stuff like that. He's the first person who made temple rules in the Chan tradition. But so he would, every time he gave a Dharma talk, this old guy would show up. Nobody knew who he was, some old layman, not a monk. And he'd sit in the back row, and then he'd leave. And then one day, he comes, and he stays. And Bajang naturally says, who are you? And he says, I am actually not a human being. A long time ago, I spoke, I was the Zen master on this mountain. In the time of Mahakashyapa, so this would be in the time of the Buddha, I was the Zen master on this mountain. Which would be very interesting, because A, there was no Zen, and B, Buddhism wasn't in China, but anyway. But a long time ago, you know, I was the Zen master of this mountain, and I spoke one word incorrectly. One word means one phrase. I spoke one phrase incorrectly, and for this I have been reborn a fox for 500 generations, presumably 500 fox generations. So please, correct my mistake and liberate me from this fox's body. And Bajang says, what did you say? And he said, someone asked me if an enlightened person is subject to cause and effect, is subject to karma. And I answered, no, an enlightened person is not subject to cause and effect. So the idea that if I am enlightened, so I was saying, I am enlightened, I will never suffer again. You know, this kind of carrot at the end of the stick, right? The end of my suffering. How can it be the end of your suffering? If the rest of the world is suffering, I can't. But anyway, so this notion of enlightenment brings like total bliss state. And so he says to Bajang, please, is an enlightened person subject to cause and effect? And Bajang says, cause and effect are clear. And the old man bows deeply, says, you can find my fox's body on the other side of the mountain, buried as Judy monk, and the story goes on. So cause and effect are clear. So this is very important. Cause and effect are clear. That doesn't mean that we can have explanations all the time. Well, you know, Joanna did this, and that's why Todd did that, and, you know, whatever. It's not always like comprehensible to us, but cause and effect are clear, and nobody is exempt. That's very important. So thank you for your question about karma. It's a good basic question that people hesitate to ask, so thank you so much. Yeah. Are there any other questions? Yes.
How does that relate to habit mind?
How does it relate to habit mind? That's a wonderful question. Personal karma is exactly habit. Habit mind is karma. We do the same thing over and over again in the same way, and we dig our little hole that we fall into all the time. Yeah. Yeah, so habit mind is another way of thinking of personal karma. Yeah, this sort of rut that we fall into all the time. Yeah. Yeah, I quit mathematical research a few years before I retired, when I realized that I was thinking about this one problem. I've been thinking about it for like 40 years, and I had some small results, but I was just going around and around and around and around. I was digging it deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and my karma was, this problem was too strong. I couldn't break out of that. So yeah. But that's habit mind, and cutting through this habit mind is a very important side effect from Zen practice, because we sit there and our mind does its habitual thing and we don't listen to it. We may see it, we may have a hard time sort of getting it to quiet down a little bit, but it doesn't make us get up from the cushion and do whatever it is that if we were puttering around, we might, I have to act on that. We don't act on that. So yeah, so cutting through our habit mind is a very, very important side effect of Zen practice. So thank you for your question. Any other?
I have a question.
Yes.
So is karma only for humans?
What a wonderful question. No, of course not. You ever have a little yappy dog, and you ever have a big clunky dog? You ever have a cat? It's not a dog. No, of course not. Of course not. Yeah, in Buddhism, humans are not special at all. They're just one of zillions and zillions of creatures. What I think of as the high Mahayana, the really complicated Mahayana sutras. It's sort of like Catholicism versus Quakers. So you have Zen is like Quakers, but even though it's part of the Mahayana, but the high Mahayana sutras, they have all these beings. I mean, they have like dragon people, the Nagas who live under the ocean, and they have all these different levels of hell and all these different levels of heaven with all the creatures associated with them. And oh my gosh, they have all these different, they have the night goddesses, and I mean, I couldn't begin to list them. It's a vast universe, and different worlds. So different Buddhas, like they have different Pure Lands, right? And then these Pure Lands are all like different universes, and then all of a sudden they'll appear together, or like a million copies of one Buddha will appear, like each in their own universe, to listen to a talk or something like that. It's just vast and wide. Why would it be limited to human beings? Yeah. It's a good way of thinking about things. It's sort of naturally ecological, because humans are not, well, sort of, I mean, you hear the thing about only a human, it's good to be a human being because only a human being can practice and wake up, but even so, that's not true. Everybody knows that's not true. So yeah, humans are not valorized as much as they are in other cultures, in other religions, and it gives you an open view of things. So thank you for your question. Yeah. Yeah, even in the comic books, I mean, ducks have karma. Right. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so thank you.